Well, hi everyone. I'm going to kick things off really briefly, but welcome to our Passports, Visas, and AAI GIF AMA or Ask Me Anything event. Thank you so much for joining today. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Mallory to provide us with a quick introduction.
Thank you. And I'm not sure who's controlling the slides, but if you could go to the next one, please. Thank you. So thank you, Jessica, for the invitation. And thank you to the Passports and Visas co-leads for inviting the G4GH Implementation Forum, or GIF, to come and host this Ask Me Anything session today. This is the third GIF AMA that we've hosted so far this year. We had one earlier for the Beacon standard and one for FIDO packets. So we're very happy now to host one covering passports and visas and general AAI things. So today, this is essentially a more informal Q&A driven chat versus a presentation heavy meeting. So we have multiple experts on G4GH passports and visas on the call today who will be answering questions in real time, both verbally and if people have questions in the chat, that's also perfectly fine. So we'll have a bit of an intro to the standards from Tom in a minute, which it'll be very short. And again, focusing on you in the audience asking questions now that you have the experts on the call. So we do ask that if you have a question to raise your Zoom hand and to ask it verbally, or you can post your question in the chat. Anyone's actually welcome to answer the question. So maybe you aren't the developer of a standard, but you have expertise or experience implementing. So anyone's actually can feel free to answer the question. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible today, and all of the materials will be made available offline as well. But if we don't get to your question, if you still put it in the chat, we can also answer those questions offline in the documentation. Next slide, please. So as we get started, I would just like to ask anyone who's on the call who would consider themselves an expert or able to answer questions about the standards to either just raise your hand if you have your video on so people can see you, or you can raise your Zoom hand. I know we have at least a couple of experts on the call today, but just so we can see, I don't know if I see anyone's hand raised. I'm not going to call on you, but just to like give a little wave if you're an expert.
Wow, people are staying cloaked for some reason.
That's okay.
Very
Okay,
good.
we see
Thanks.
one hand raised. I think
Uh,
we have at least two or three on the call, which is good, but maybe more as well. But people just don't want to call themselves an expert. That's completely fine as well. So next slide, please. So I'm wrapping up the introduction right now. I'll shortly hand over to Tom, and then the remainder or majority of the time will be spent having some Q&A from the attendees, and then some like wrapping up at the end. So that's what we'll be doing today. So with that, I'm happy to hand over to Tom, and I will be keeping a timer. We'll keep this quite short. And yeah, take it away, Tom.
yeah, great. Thank you, Mallory. That's fantastic. Absolutely, I'm going to keep this short because um, there are experts on here that are far more qualified than I to talk about this stuff. But here's my quick take on it. This is the best one-page summary of passports I could give you. What is passport? It is right now it's two specifications. One of them is Duri Passport, um, which is a token. It's currently a JWT, nothing but JWT, and it relies on OIDC authentication and the trust anchor. Well, the trust mechanism is signatures on the JWT token. The token, the passport token pertains to the researcher as of right now. That's the only option. And these are the 5 types of information about the researcher that the token can carry. Everything from permissions to access a certain data set to affiliations and a couple of other things in there as well. So then the AAI spec from data security is kind of the protocol, or it's the way that you use OIDC to pass the tokens around and present them to obtain access to data. So that's a quick summary. Next slide, please. So this is just, I'm going to say the same thing a couple of times, and this is a little bit more of a pictorial version of it. Again, the passport is a token. It's got those 5 different types of information about the researcher. And this is showing the way that the token moves around. And you hit the next slide, please. This example shown in this picture is one of a governance model where there's a data access committee, and that means that in order to obtain access to the data, a user has to submit a data access request to the DAC and to the data access committee, and then they get assigned access, and then they can join in, or they can obtain access to the data. So that's just kind of showing that it's not only the access, but the governance. So next slide, please. This is, I'm going quick, and this is a lot more information. So look up the specs online if you care to have that detail, which you would need to if anyway, that's where the detailed information is. Oh, and it includes, I wanted to highlight, there's an FAQ there that gives you a little bit more context for sort of some of the reasons why things are the way they are, and a couple of the flows in more detail than I'm covering today. Next slide. This is another view of the act of obtaining access to the data. It's showing that the researcher logs in, and having logged in, they get their passport onto the analysis system, and then the passport itself, whether it's one visa or 3 visas or 500 visas, it gets sent over to the data holder at the thing I'm labeling the policy enforcement point. And then if access is available, then the policy enforcement point will say okay, and the data holder will provide the data. Next slide, please. And here is the approval process that must precede the the access, which I think is hopefully clear as it is. And then the next slide. And this is the another sort of governance process that has to happen ahead of time, before the DAC can even consider a DAR. The data has to be present. The metadata about the data has to be present, all the consents and any data use constraints that come in from the policy. They have to be set up in these various different places. So there's quite a lot of policy setup that has to happen. Currently, this stuff is not covered at all by the Passport or AAI standard. This is purely kind of it's undefined, unspecified. It has to happen, but it's not in the standard, but in the standard, but it is meant to be with the advent of data passports coming up. Next slide. And what's next? I put in a bunch of slides that I didn't have time for, which is fine. But just to give you a flavor of what we're working on, verifiable credentials is a new way of having a better trust model that allows you to put the visas into wallets. And I don't have as deep an understanding of that as others on the call do. There are, we want to, aside from verifiable credentials, we want to allow different governance processes, have better support for them. And we want to have computable and standardized policy governance by putting the policy on the data passport tag. And so let's sail through the last couple of slides here. Next slide, please. Yeah, actually linger on the previous one just a second. Okay, yeah. So this is what I would see the new passport as looking like. We haven't really decided what it'll look like, but I'm seeing it as one spec with additional features added to it. The next slide. And this is the profiles, which is right now we've got a single profile, assuming that it shows the pattern that I've shown in the pictures. And I envision this being multiple profiles showing not only does passport move, but the identity can move. So you can go to the next slide and the next and the next. So 3 profiles and, maybe one's VC. Um, and we'll come back to what's next in terms of meetings, conversations. There's another copy of the slide later on. So, oh, and a link to the roadmap. So with that, thank you. I tried to get it done, almost got it done in 5.
That was a very excellent effort, Tom. I appreciate you keeping to time. Great. So I know that's a hard ask to summarize passports and all the related topics in 5 minutes, but you managed to do it, plus a bit of looking at the roadmap ahead. So that's excellent. So now's the time for everyone who's joined who has a burning question about passports or visas or AI to ask. So at this point, it's probably best to stop sharing the screen because there's nothing that we need to look at. Yes, and now we can see everyone's beautiful faces. And again, if you have a question and would like to ask it verbally, please just raise your Zoom hand, and we'll try to get those in order. Or if you'd rather ask your question in the chat, you can type it in the chat, and we can either respond verbally or in the chat. And while everyone is thinking of their first question, um, I actually wanted to ask the first question with regard to sort of the next phase of passport. So you very briefly mentioned this, Tom, but also if anyone else wants to speak about sort of the next iteration. It sounds like it's in the gathering requirements and kind of figuring out what that looks like. And so I'm just wondering how that's happening, how people can get involved, if they have requirements or want to sort of feed into that next development phase. I'm not sure if Tom or someone else wants to speak a bit more on that.
I mean, I can, or Jessica can. I mean, the last slide I put up was just a list of meetings. There's going to be more discussion about the roadmap, much of which is about passports at the data security meetings coming up. There's another one on Monday, even though we had one this past Monday. We wanted to have extra, so we put one in there. There's a jury meeting in November on the calendar. And there's the data passports study group. Jessica, why don't you tell me if there's anything I missed?
No, that's about it. And I think if you refer to the slides, or I can also add my email into the chat in case anyone needs help with the calendar invites, or to be added to the mailing list. I know there are some folks that are interested in data passports but may not be added to the list yet. So feel free to get in touch with us and we can help you out.
Great. And is the idea, in fact, that you want people to maybe engage in this phase that maybe haven't engaged before or hadn't implemented passports for one reason or another, and this is like their chance to sort of get their requirements fed into it?
Yes, 100%. I think another thing that I very neglectful to forget to mention, but there's the notion of authentication, authorization, and trust. These are happening in many different places in GA4GH right now. It's not only at data security and DURI. Also, there's the Federated Machine Learning and Artificial Intelligence Working Group. We've been engaged there. Let's see, there's the, why am I spacing out? Well, Beacon. Beacon is working a lot on authentication authorization. There were some really excellent sessions at plenary talking about Beacon security and great discussions at some of those. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, cloud. Sorry, Venkat. Yeah, cloud is very much involved in sort of shaping the next thing. The cloud work stream is in a phase of pushing implementations and initiatives rather than granular updates to individual specs. They've got initiatives to get different things done and figuring out how to address not only authentication authorization, but also things like paying for compute, dealing with the very large token that can result. So yeah, those are the other things that are going on.
Great. Anyone, I don't see any hands raised. Anyone have the next question they'd like to ask?
There is a
Oh,
question
actually,
in the chat.
yeah. Michael, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question out loud, or I'm happy to read it?
Sure, Mallory. Hi, good morning. Yeah, so I'm pretty well, no expert, but pretty well familiar with the status of passports rolling out in the US. What about the rest of the world? What's happening in Europe and Africa and Asia and elsewhere? How global are passports and their adoption and use right now? No, Tom. Thank you, though, but no.
People are reluctant to take that expert label. But if not an expert, Michael knows more than most, I would say, as to a couple other people, which I guess I'll
Thanks in large part to
calling them out, but I'm tempted, sorely tempted to call them out right now. We do have a couple of folks from Europe who could speak to the question Michael raised.
I think, Mallory, you're in the UK, is that right?
Yes.
What are you seeing on that side of the pond?
Um, well, I guess I have very limited also implementation expertise, and to be fair, most of my engagement so far has been at the European level, so engagement in projects like
Yeah, that's what
BDI, which I
know
think
about, like Elixir and so forth. Like what's happening with like the major European initiatives? What are they doing for auth currently, and what are their plans going forward?
I don't really know within Europe because that would be groups like Genomics England, UK Biobank,
Yeah.
Health Data Research UK. I don't know if we have any people from those groups on the call. I mean, I think they're probably working off of systems they've developed previously. I don't know how plugged into G4GH authentication, authorization standards. Sasha, did you have an idea? I saw you
Yeah.
and yourself.
So as far as Genomics England goes, they're providing in the process of providing support for people to use passports as a way of authenticating. Um, and as far as there was another one, Elixir. So yeah, Elixir is probably the biggest user of passports in AI, and they're heavy developers as well. So they're very involved with the maturation of passports and AI together. So yeah, I would say the biggest use of passports is in Europe at the current time. I mean, NIH is the other, but I think Elixir might be the most distributed usage so far.
Anybody have insight to Africa or Asia?
So Angela put in the chat about Elwazi potentially using passports. I know it's a big group in project in Africa.
Right. There was a hackathon recently where they used a number of different cloud APIs and experimented with, I think, the uses of passports in that case, but I can't speak in detail to it.
Do we have anyone from the Elwazi project on the call?
I'm not seeing anybody.
Yeah. And Angela, who is this
Dylan,
in
maybe
Japan?
Dylan.
Sorry, did someone mention me?
Oh, great. Ellen.
Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, so this goes back to Europe. So I put a link into the Life Science login, which supports passports and visas. And that's what the federated infrastructure that we use for GDI, which is a driver project. But as was mentioned, I mean, basically that is now what was the Elixir AI, which drove a lot of the development in Europe for passports and visas, sort of like between 5 and 10 years ago. So there is quite a lot of use of passports and visas within Europe.
That's great. Thank you. Very helpful context and appreciate the links. I'm partly asking from through a lens of looking forward to data passports and represent how ensuring that as we go forward with data passports, that they're able to represent the types of policies that we see globally, right? That they're expressive enough to not only meet US needs, but other key groups around the world that are already moving this direction as well, and ensuring that we get their input for use cases and so forth. I mean, for all of our work, but data passports in particular, as those start to, represent more policy than the current researcher passports do, either directly or through linkages out to them, and be able to support the automated processing of, policy information combined with researcher roles and authorizations to actually provide reliable mechanical access to the data. So anyway, thanks. That was really helpful. That was a nice, quick global overview of the more progressive groups and where they are.
Thanks, Michael. Angela, did you want to add from your comments in the chat?
Yeah, well, I don't have much more to add. Those are just the two that come off the top of my head that I've heard of doing things, but I don't know what they're doing. But the question I have is whether there is any effort in the passports community to document the implementation. I know some of the different work streams and standards have these kind of like running implementer lists, and if that hasn't already started, we should probably do so, because just to Michael's point, I think this is definitely something that we should have an eye on.
Is that something like the service registry concept, where registering the groups that have implementations that are available?
So I think that's possible, but it might be harder than just like it might take time, right, to get it set up, Tom. And so maybe just in the meantime, we can just like get a list.
Correct. Yeah. And on the roadmap is actually a couple of projects to enhance the service registry to make sure it can accommodate the roles of the passport ecosystem, like a passport broker, for example, and to add conformance testing so that we can be properly listed in the implementations registry. So meaning implementers can be listed there. So yeah, that's a piece of what we're going to try to grow into, trying to follow in the footsteps of DERS, who's had some great success in getting DERS servers listed. Yeah, it seems very helpful to the community. So we'll be working on that.
Yeah, just quick +1 for getting on the service registry bandwagon, because it's got a lot of momentum, particularly in the cloud work stream, and it pulls together a lot of information that enables a lot of other things. Because once you've got the various services that exist in the registry, then you've got contact information, directly or indirectly, to know who to reach out to if you'd like to get their review of use cases that we're developing, see if it covers their needs, that type of thing. It provides a lot of benefits, and it's an enabler to keep the community populated with the right people as we move forward. So sorry for jumping in, but
No,
yeah.
don't be sorry.
No,
This Q&A.
absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to have more.
All answers are welcome.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear from newer implementers as well. I see at least one person who I think is comparatively new on the scene, or maybe not implementing it yet, but thinking about it. So all questions are welcome. All assertions of truth are welcome too, even if you're not sure, or if you don't consider yourself an expert. Love to hear more.
Or
Yeah,
even,
actually,
yeah, go ahead, Mallory.
I think I'm going to say the same thing you're going to say. And Sasha, I saw your question, but let me piggyback off of what Tom just asked. Yeah, so I'm wondering if people on the call, and I won't call on you, so please feel free to raise your Zoom hand. If you are thinking about or planning to implement passports as part of your project, your service, wherever you're from, but maybe you don't know enough, or you think it doesn't meet your needs, so you're sort of like on that fence of, I need something, but I'm not sure if it's passports. Maybe just raise your hand just so we can get a sense of who in the crowd is kind of like on that fence. And I'll give you a couple seconds to find your raise hand button. I see a physical hand and a virtual hand. Okay.
Yay,
So
Wendy.
a couple people.
Good to see you, Wendy.
You
Does
again
anyone,
in a small box.
oh, and I see Deborah too. Does anyone who's in this category want to say something about maybe like what they're considering or what they're struggling with in making that decision?
I mean, sure, I can be pretty brief because it's hasn't really moved on, I think, from when we spoke in person. And it's around the one stage of we have our Safe People registry where researchers make accounts and they populate their profile. If that information is already part of a life science or a like login, great. They log in with that and then their profile's made and that's all they have to do. So that would be a big win. And then I think the other side is giving the option to data custodians if they so choose, keeping in mind it has not really come up in the UK when we're talking with data custodians that this is something that they use, but giving them the option such that if they click valid on an individual, that is actually then automatically adding a visa to that person's passport. That would require, I suspect, quite a bit more dev work on our side, which we're simply not prepared for as we're currently like in launch mode. But it is definitely something that we want to get to on our roadmap. It's just why I wish our developers were here rather than me, because then they could query much more in-depth technical questions. Whereas I'm a bit more like, what is the overall plan here? So that's where we're at.
Great. Thanks, Wendy. Anyone want to comment against that?
I was gonna ask or add that at the Broad, in the Duos system, we have two needs really for passports, and one of them is to query for a user's passport. So once a user signs in, we'd love to know more about what that user has access to from other systems, so that if there is an existing passport for that user, we could know more about that. And also, once that user does go through the process of making a data access request and getting approval, then we would love to be able to become a visa provider for that individual and share that with whatever passport brokers that are out there for a period of time. Those are our potential use cases that we've been looking at.
Great, thank you.
I think I might be the only Canadian on the call, but correct me if I'm wrong, anyone else who's here. So from the point of view of what's happening with, the major project, I'm with the Pan-Canadian Genome Library driver project. And I've been dropping into some of the data security meetings for the last little while when schedule allows. At least from our perspective, our sort of version 1 of our implementation is very much like one big centralized thing. And so we don't really have, OIDC is working well enough for us right now. And so we have, Passports AAI on the horizon as like, we need to look at that when we get to the point of wanting to connect with other resources, but we're just not there in our roadmap yet. So that's sort of the phase that we're at, in the sense that right now, we don't have a use case. I don't think we have a use case for passports and visas.
Great, thank you, Karen, and for changing your name, because I think your name was Jessica in the beginning. I was very confused. The name on your Zoom profile.
Maybe somebody else did it for you. It said Jessica Seagoben before.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I had a duplicate clone. I just changed it back.
I did not do that, but thank you for changing it back.
Yeah.
Definitely not Jessica. Yeah.
And thanks for bringing in a Canadian perspective on where you guys are at with the identities.
Yeah, I would just briefly comment that there are a couple good ways to decentralize the authentication, or the sort of, go from having one central trust anchor to having a distribution and, a distribution of trust. You can continue to use OIDC, but have multiple anchors if you want, or you can use something very different, such as verifiable credentials, although whether that's been done successfully yet, I'm not sure, but it's getting close.
I think it sort of speaks to both sort of an outreach and also a documentation. I suspect that I think there's a lot of driver projects that are in the same state that we are, where we're aware of passports, visas, GA4GH AAI, but so far OIDC, out of the box OIDC is working well enough for us. And so I think that, both reaching out to driver projects and saying, if you haven't adopted or started to adopt this yet, why is that? Do you not have the use cases? Do you not have the expertise? Like that sort of like, one-on-one reach out, but also just kind of documentation that directly addresses that. Like, so you're using OIDC. Do you need passport? Or when do you need, right, passports and visas? Like at what state? What are the specific use cases that have made driver projects move from to using this GA4GH standard as opposed to just, all of the non GA4GH, authentication protocols that are available.
Yes. Excellent insights. Another thing that we intend to do starting now is to have reference implementations, because I know that in some cases we have heard back why people haven't adopted, or we've gotten the sense that one of the gaps is their code that's ready to go. Can they pick something up and just use it? And although there's an old starter kit, there's some code that you can copy, and there's some pieces out there. It's really not that easy to figure out how to implement it, even though what you have to implement wouldn't be that complicated. It'd be much better to have an actual proven implementation. So we're going to provide that to make the on-ramp be a lot easier. Deborah.
Thank you so much. Can you see me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for confirming that. You asked what's being done in Africa. I cannot really say what's being done in Africa, but what I know is we are not using the standard in Uganda. So regarding passports, what I'm certain about is this is something that we need, that will be key in ensuring data security. But I guess the starting point would be in, I think, spreading the word about the need for the passports and the visas, so that people are aware about the use. And then, of course, ensuring inclusivity and ensuring that they are tailored to the needs of the African population. Thank you.
So I guess what would be the best way, and this is a question again for like Tom and colleagues, to make sure that, there's Deborah and her colleagues can get that input, or they can find the documentation they need to start to think about whether implementing passports works for their systems. Is it just like joining the meetings, or is there something else?
Joining the meetings, people can reach out and we can talk you through things. I would say reach out to some of the people who have spoken on this call from having begun to work with passports. So these are good things to do. I'm gonna add a couple links that have been shared here and a couple links to some of the plenary sessions, the Connect sessions from earlier this month, that would also probably be helpful to learn more about passports.
Great, that'd be great. And anything put in the chat as well, we'll capture in the notes for this meeting.
We also have quite a few videos on passports and AI on YouTube that have a lot of detail about walking through what they do, how they behave, and all of that. And they're really good. I think there's one in particular that's a two-part series that's up. So if anybody wants to know more about it in a more passive way, those videos are great. And I would recommend doing that as well.
Yes, thank you, Sasha. Anything else, anyone else from a different project, different part of the world who is on the fence or thinking about implementing passports but isn't sure, or, I think we've heard ranging from we have the use case but not the resources, to we don't even have the use case necessarily clarified right now, to there's other things that already work for us. But anyone else have anything they want to add on this point? Okay, that's fine. If you think of something, feel free to share it in the chat or raise your hand. Um, I think the next question that was in the chat was from Sasha about plans to expand the researcher information portion of the spec. And I think, Tom, you answered yes, but I don't know if there's anything else, any other details you wanted to mention about for that question.
The Sure. So actually, I'm not sure I understand the question. Come to think of it, the researcher information portions. Oh, okay. In other words, this is what Karen was asking about. How are there going to be more? No, it was Wendy asking whether there were going to be more visa types. I guess whether there's going to be more information about researchers captured in the researcher visa. Yeah. So the answer is yes, and it'll be driven by implementers and the analysis um, about the data passports, where we're going to be looking more closely. In fact, maybe it'd be useful to bring up, let's say, slide number. Let's look at slide 17, if we could, if you wouldn't mind sharing that again. And that's just basically the slide that talks about the next gen DURI passport spec. And again, this is sort of a straw person that once we get in the room with people who are more knowledgeable and experienced than I, it could be restructured. But as a starting point, this is what a next gen passport spec looks like in my mind. And the part I wanted to focus on was the visa types on the two sides there. So on the left, it's the existing researcher visa types, showing that you're capturing the affiliations and permissions and linked identities of a researcher. And on the right, the new data visa types, which have been identified and sort of written up in a white paper from Jonathan Lawson and myself. We're kind of imagining that the data is tagged with these different policy elements. So it could be that there is an oversight body of this particular DAC is looking over this particular um, data set. And so if the DAC has approved it, and that means that there's a controlled access grant, for example, for that researcher, then you would go forward. So we're going to be going through a process of looking at other use cases, other scenarios. Oh, good. Wendy has put something. Yeah, great. I would love to. Yeah. All right, anyway, we'll go through the process, and I'm going to jump over to Wendy's link in just a moment. But basically, we'll be adding not only more information about researchers as is needed by the use cases, but we'll add some sort of definition and suggestions of how you would compare the policy with the researcher type. And Jaime, why don't you speak? I'm going to shut up.
Yes, I just wanted to add to this point that the work we have initiated on verifiable credentials is helping us to discover how to improve some limitations on the current passport. So the point, if there will be a change in the research passports, could be the answer yes, once we proceed or we advance in this mapping to the verified credentials. So probably there will be in the near future a new specification on how to express passports, the visas in verified credentials, and this will probably imply some improvements of the information that we could represent when using an infrastructure like the verified credentials.
Great, thanks, Jaime. Wendy, did you want to verbalize I think it's a YouTube link you shared?
Yeah, I mean it's a walkthrough of our researcher profile, and I should be awesome and send you a list. But we used to have a list, and then every time we would talk to communities and update, and it all goes out of date, and I just sort of refuse. Yeah, it's the criteria. We did a whole bunch of community engagement with data custodians, admittedly, very much admittedly across the UK, but looking at the 5 safes and actually published guidance on what criteria should you look at, like what is important for determining someone is safe to access your data. And so that's what we've come up with, and it's been pretty stable actually. So if I'm allowed to request what criteria would go into that person's passport about that researcher, that would make it like instantaneous for people to have all the information they need to decide whether they're safe or not across a wide gamut of data custodians, that would be it. And I think that would also potentially really support more uptake across the UK of actually using passports if it was aligning with their processes already.
Thank you ever so much, Wendy. I've put a link to that researcher user profile form video into the last slide after. So we'll capture that. It's fantastic. Exactly the sort of input that we want.
It sounds like either Wendy or someone from HDR UK should really be part of this core group that's moving with the next version.
Yes, I'd love to have Wendy and others join in. Karen has offered to. Karen's been a long-term participant, but she's offering to help with some of the documentation. It's phenomenal. So yes, please. Would love to have you join. Deborah did some excellent research that she presented at the plenary. Be great to have that as well. So phenomenal.
Tom, I think what would be also good is if we can have presentations in during, like, regardless of being passports or not, have people try to present what they're trying to solve, right? And let's see where passports meets them or not, right? I think that would be what we're trying to do in the cloud is actually have that is try to have projects present. So it might be, Mallory, maybe, I don't know if you guys do this in GIF also, but it might be beneficial to kind of have those driver projects just present what they're trying to solve overall.
Yeah, we don't have anything specifically right now through GIF to do that, but that doesn't mean we can't help support somehow between myself, Brian, and Wafa as the GIF co-leads. Yeah, it sounds valuable. It sounds like it's more just like knowledge sharing, but more about the needs versus the solutions.
Yeah, because I feel like the gap is not that there isn't potential solutions out there. It's we don't know how much there's out there for GA4GH for a lot of people, and then their immediate needs are solving like, oh, we just need data in the cloud, or we need to have access, and so then OICR becomes an easy lift, or maybe there's no use case for them, right? They're really the only data custodians. They're the only ones that are minting passports and everything. So there's really no need for that. So I'd be curious to see what the expectation is from the community on certain projects.
This also to me sounds like potentially a topic for a Connect session coming up in April. It would take a bit of like planning and preparation if you want input from people who aren't like always coming to Connect, but they can prepare a presentation or prepare something to come to the session. Great. And I see Sasha has suggested that, or inviting Wendy to come give a presentation, or someone from your team, Wendy, maybe joint presentation.
Happy to do it.
Great. Okay. There's lots of great comments in the chat, but I don't know if I see another question per se. But lots of like +1s and emoji reactions, which is great. And then we're even like creating some action items, which is also great. Anyone else have a question, either or a response to a question we've already asked, or a new question? We have maybe about 10 minutes left before we need to start wrapping up. We have 31 people on the call. Surely someone has a burning question. If not, I'm going to pick a boring question. Sasha asks, when is the next version of Passports expected to be ready?
I would love to think that it would be, well, I always think things through earlier than they will be. So, I would hope for well, I would hope for April, but I know it's not going to be that soon, but I think that a year from now, by the next plenary, we'd have an update for sure. It may not be all of what we've got, all the aspirations we have on the roadmap. And I think that we would likely roll out the individual features, separately and not batch everything up into a huge 2.0. So the 2.0
that was
is really not specifically designated yet. It's really just kind of almost a symbolic name right now. So.
Yeah, Tom, that was my next question, which is, could we do some minor releases to push some of these changes faster? Because I was thinking the update to the spec on the researcher information part of this would be, I think, relatively straightforward because it would just be additional information and non-breaking changes. That being
Yes.
said, a 2.0 with all sorts of other things that you've mentioned might take more time. So it might be good to use our new GA4GH feature maturity model to push some of this stuff a little bit quicker.
100%. Yes,
Cool.
it'd be much quicker to add a new like researcher visa claim.
Yep.
Also, there is a capability of using custom claims. So the lack of it as a standard is not necessarily blocking anybody from implementing those things. So in a way, we could almost have, like, let's say HDR UK could add the information they needed as custom claims, and then having validated that was a good idea, we could bring those into the spec after they've begun to use them. So different ways we could roll these things out. And I agree that incremental is better than huge monolithic releases.
Dasha, how much can we lean on the tech team to use the starter kit to release the draft result?
I was just thinking that.
Thank
I
you
love you
for the
guys.
question,
I
Venkat.
absolutely
Yes.
love you guys. You're always reading my mind, and I love it. That was where I was trying to get to eventually. Because I was thinking, you know what, we could probably do a quick implementation of a draft feature release for this user kind of pathway that Wendy needs. And I think that could be done. I mean, all we have to do is, I mean, this is a spec change. It's pretty minor. Like it's really just defining the fields that we want to add up to it and push it. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, as Tom said. So yeah, I'm kind of thinking along those lines too. Like this could be something that could be done in a couple of months, to have it ready to rock. If we get the detailed specs from the community quickly enough, I think that's the rate limiting step here is trying to get some clarity on that, both from Wendy and potentially others that would want to use this to go through the data access request process. So this would be, in case anybody is like not quite following what we're talking about here, the idea would be to use the information encoded here on the researcher to be able to actually have enough information on said researcher to go to a data access committee and they have everything they need to actually approve a request in the first place, instead of just saying, okay, yeah, we approve your request. Here's the information in your visa. We'll issue your visa. We are actually saying, here's all the information you need before that process would happen in order to say, actually, yes, I trust this person. I've seen all of the information about that researcher and I want to go forward. So this would be a relatively straightforward change addition to our current spec as it stands now. And so, yeah, if anybody on this call is interested in this or using passports for this particular thing, getting approval at the data access committee point and using it to do that, then please let us know. Reach out to Tom, myself, any of the experts that have listed themselves here today, and we can try to do that on, I think, relatively quickly. Sorry
We
for
could open up a
hijacking everything.
PR today, well, not today, but we could, very short order, open up a PR, and then that can begin the process of talking about adding this. It's
Yep.
really,
Tom, how behind is the starter kit from the spec now?
I think it's fairly far behind.
Yeah, that was the 1.0 spec, I think, the starter
Yeah.
kit.
Yeah, it's really, I think, it needs to be updated. And I think also, well, it needs to be updated. I would say that as we do these features going forward, whether they're the larger efforts such as the data passports and sort of enforcement point, those ought to have reference implementations or starter kits as we add those more complex features, but also we should update the DERS starter kit or make a new one for a passport broker and perhaps even an enforcement point. I don't believe the existing, well,
I don't think so. I mean, so I put it in the chat. So from the plenary and from Connect last year, we were trying to do more GA4GH in the real world. And one of them is an entire model where passports and DERS and data connect and packets are involved, right? So maybe one of the goals we could do, Tom, you and I, maybe with the tech team, and just start pushing these pieces together. And then this way, Wendy can come in and overlay on top of that, hey, this is the actual real world scenario we're going to do. And we could just put in data, right? And it'd be a public data for now, but we can prototype what Wendy's at.
Yeah, just to add to that, yes, and the tech team is already building a sandbox in AWS for starter kits to live in the cloud. So that way people can go in, they can play around, they can see yes, I did. I absolutely did. I was thinking of him in that moment when I said yes, and I wish Brian was here to hear it. Anyway, I'm getting the tech team lined up to do exactly this, because we do now have a sandbox. And I think that we're pulling public data from, gosh, I can't remember what we're pointing to exactly, but we do have a public data set that we can point to, and people could do an end-to-end implementation. And I think, Venkat, what you're describing isn't a starter kit, but it's a use case end-to-end.
Yeah.
So you would have multiple of the quote starter kits all daisy chained together to solve a problem. And so I think this needs to be a space both for that kind of thing, where you do a basically walkthrough demonstration of a pipeline. But I do think the starter kits in their own right need to also be able to live there too, just so people can pick and choose what they want. That being said, GDI has a very, very well done implementation of passports in AI, and I think that we could also look to them to get example code to redo a starter kit that's on a current spec. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel to do this. This is something we could get online, I think, relatively quickly because there are excellent implementations already. So yeah, sorry, I'm hijacking the meeting. I'll stop talking. But this is a very exciting thing, and I'm glad that people are interested, because it helps us figure out how to move next.
Sasha, I mean, I don't know if we need to implement new starter kits, right? If there's a good implementation, why not just showcase that implementation in AWS, right? I mean,
That's
that could
exactly what I'm
effectively
saying.
be, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, is basically, those are being gifted to us by the community, so we should just use them. As long as we can pull that code in a relatively straightforward way and kind of keep it contained, then that's easy enough to do. I think we need to look at it to know how much work it would really be to make it a place to live happily there. But yeah, that was my point, is like I think we can really just take in these things because people have already done it, Angela.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what the verified implementations concept is. And I think the reason that it hasn't gotten far along yet is because there is a bit of like criteria sort of management where like we need to meet certain expectations of the community around like openness and support, what kind of support is available behind it. So yeah, I think if we're willing to just call them informal reference implementations or something like that, that's fine, but I don't think we can call them starter kits or verified implementations unless we're following that sort of stated model that we've already put forward.
Great. I'm looking at the clock and I think I'm going to end the Q&A session bit here. So thank you very much for everyone who asked a question or prompted. I think we had like a few blocks of like good discussions, multiple inputs from different people who are on their implementation journey. which is great. Jessica, do you mind sharing the slides again, starting from slide 24? Oh, you're on it. Excellent. Yeah, so slide 24, just to, yep, so back one. Yeah, just to, again, remind people, and these were mentioned multiple times already, some upcoming meetings that are happening around passports, data security, etc. If you want to get involved, or maybe send people from your team to join these, especially if you want to be involved in sort of the next iteration or phase of developing the standard. And then some links I think we're putting here from what were mentioned in the chat as well, but we'll also have those links available in the agenda document afterwards. So next slide, which is the last slide. As I mentioned, this is the third GIF AMA that we've hosted, and we do plan to continue hosting them next year. And so we'd like to hear from you how you think this session went. So there's a feedback survey here. It's just a couple of questions if you want to fill it out now while this event is still fresh in your mind, or it will stay open if you'd like to fill that out. And there's also a place at the bottom to suggest the next topic for a GIF AMA. So if you have some ideas, this is the place to share them. Everything will be linked from the agenda document, a recording of this meeting, the questions and answers, all the slides, everything is in that one place. We are starting to think about I think the next AMA might be around GA4GH, if that's interesting to you. But again, we're open to other suggestions for the next GIF AMAs in the next year. And finally, I'll just hand over to Angela for one final comment before we close today.
Yeah, so I just wanted to acknowledge the unfortunate interruption earlier today, and thank you, Tom, for moving through it so quickly and gracefully. I will look into it, and we'll try to prevent that from happening again in the future. So thanks everybody for your not letting it derail us. That's all.
Great, thanks. And I don't know, Jessica, if you wanted to wrap up the meeting.
Yeah, I think everything has been said already, and I guess just one final note to thank everyone for their participation. And yeah, just a final plug, if you are interested in these conversations, please do join us at our data security meetings. The next one is Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and feel free to get in touch with any of us, including myself, for those details. And yes, we will be distributing the materials shortly in a little while. But yeah, thank you all for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank
Right.
you, bye.
Thank you.